I'm engaged. How do I get married? I'm your host, Kevin Dennis. In addition to leading the charge at Wedding IQ, I also run Fantasy Sound Event Services, a lighting and entertainment company based in Livermore, California, that I founded over 35 years ago. Each week on this podcast, we'll explore a new corner of the wedding planning so you can prepare for your I-dos without the stress. From budgeting to booking vendors to day of drama, let's talk smart wedding planning. Well, welcome to the next episode of Now That I'm Engaged, How Do I Get Married? And we have with us our guest today, Bradie Flores, and she's going to be talking about stress. So all the crazy fun stuff that, our couples deal with when they are getting married. So Bradie, to start off, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you get to where you are here today?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate being here. I love to talk about stress all the time. So I have been with my own company, Flores Events. We've been for 5 years now, doing weddings and other events. And before that, I was in different levels of administrative work. So I would do events and hospitality and travel and project management, like within those fields. So it always was something that like keeping on timelines and prioritizing tasks and working with teams was like very natural in my day to day. And then in my personal life, I was like the go-to person in my family. They're like, we're going to have a party. Bradie has to do it. We're going to, so-and-so's having a baby or he's getting a master's degree. Like Bradie's going to throw it. Bradie will take care of it. And I've always just like loved that. So when I got married 6 years ago, I was like, I could do this. I could plan my own wedding. I got it down. I don't need anybody. And I always say like, I'm the coordinator that didn't have a coordinator because I learned the hard way. And I got through that that process. And I turned to my then husband, now husband, still husband. And, sometimes I tell him he's my first husband just in case he gets out of line.
I love that.
And I was like, I loved everything about that process. I just hated that it was for me. Like if I could go back and redo it for someone else, I had so much fun. But the stress part, like dealing with different things like opinions and struggles and family and friends, that's where I was like, oh, when it's about me, I don't like it. So that's when I decided I'm going to kind of start to like dabble and do a couple weddings here and there. I started out with some friends that I knew were getting married. And then I was like, you know what? I have enough of the like project management experience and customer service experience. I'm just going to go for it. So I opened Flores Events and we've been doing it ever since.
That's exciting. Yeah. And I love that we were all saying stress, like it's a, like we're going at it real quick. So today the whole thing is about avoiding stress. So what do you think, like going through as a full service planner, like what are some of the stress points that you see couples encounter during the planning process?
Yeah. I think obviously there's a lot of like the logistical things, like how much are we going to spend? Where are we going to have it? How long do we have to plan? So there's a lot of those, what I would put in my brain, like administrative logistic tasks that cause natural stress just because you have to think about how much you're going to invest into this process and how much time do you have if you're working or going to school or have like a lot of family things going on. So just kind of like mapping that out and how it will work in your day-to-day lives. And then I think the second part is really like dealing with society at large, shall we say, like your family and your friends, because I think people like they love you and they want the best for you and they're just inquisitive, like they're excited for you to get married and you're excited, and so they have questions and sometimes it can be like overwhelming. You're like, I haven't even had a chance to like breathe and think about this and you're already asking me like where, when, how many people can I bring, my like mail person, like there's a lot. So I think kind of the logistics, but also just like the life of it all and having people who love you and want to be a part of it can be sometimes a little stressful, a little overwhelming, which is normal, I think.
Yeah. I think that this episode is going to be very important for couples because I think it's a pivotal episode, I think, because I think a lot of the reasons why couples will come listen to this podcast is because they're looking to avoid stress. Yeah. So I think this is going to be really good information for them. But I wanted to ask you, as a full service planner too, I'm sure, couples probably come to you with a lot of these stress points and ask for help. But what are the most common stress points that you've been seeing with couples lately? And do you have tools to help them combat that?
Yeah. I would say a lot of the things that I get from people are things like timeline. Timeline is a big
Mm.
stressor. How's the day going to flow? Who's going to keep them on track? Which is why they have a coordinator or a planner, right? That's a whole job on its own, is keeping that day going. And if you work with DJs and photographers and stuff, they can do that to support you, but that's a whole another person. So
They got their own
they
timelines
can't
going
do their
on.
job. Exactly. So when I've heard from, photographers and DJs and videographers and other vendors, they're like, I was able to really focus on my job because I wasn't having to manage a timeline. You were taking care of
Mhm.
it. So, and when you are an engaged person, if you have a coordinator, like, that timeline doesn't fall on you. They're doing the timeline for
Yeah.
you. So that takes that stress off. So, like, investing in the professionals who know how long it takes people to get to sit down from a reception when they're enjoying cocktail hour, or know how long it takes people when you have a more remote venue to really actually, like, get there, park, get into the venue, like, all those buffer times. So I would say for sure timeline. Another big thing is design, because you're just
Yeah.
inundated with, like, so many things like Instagram and Pinterest and all these ideas. And it's like, how am I going to pull that together? Like, what rentals do I
Or like,
get?
where
How
do
does
you
it look?
start? Like, how do
Yes,
you even make your vision come to life? I'm sure it's super overwhelming.
exactly. Like, when you see these amazing, like, reception entrances, and they've got, like, the cold sparklers and the lights, and it's like, they're like, where do I go for that? So to know, like, okay, we already know the vendors, we already know the packages, like, we can get you set up, and kind of starts to take some of that stress off. So having someone that's doing it, like, every week and is already in that
Mhm.
as a resource, like, it's going to come back to you tenfold, because that's so many less things that you have to look up or research or, like, find examples of. If you have a trusted individual that you're working with, you can be like, help me, help me find
Yeah.
this person. Yeah. So that's what I've
Totally.
found, is, like, layouts and timeline are some big ones outside of, like, the budget and things like that.
Well,
Do you honestly have a lot of couples that come to you before they start choosing other vendors? Because I think that is one of my questions too, is like, there are so many decisions to make. And I think once you get engaged, you're like, holy crap, like, where do I start? Like,
Yeah.
how do I begin this process? Do you think there's certain things that couples should prioritize in the beginning
Yeah.
versus jumping into other things later?
Yeah. I do. I would say a lot of our partial and full planning clients definitely come to us when they've booked a venue, booked a date.
Mm-hmm.
And those are two in the same, but you know what I mean. And then they find us. So they already know, like, before we start finding all these amazing people who are going to be on our team, like, who's going to steer the ship, essentially. And so with a lot of our clients for those packages, they do find us right after venue. With more of our month of coordination, I find that most of those couples, when they have a little bit more freedom in their schedule, or, like, comfort with the planning, they'll come to us when they usually have quite a few vendors booked. They may have one or two that they're still looking for. But generally they've got, like, venue, photo, video, DJ, and maybe they're just still looking for florals or still looking for lighting.
Mm-hmm.
And they really are kind of getting into that last, like, 6 to 10 months, and they're starting to feel the, like, oh, it's no longer, like, 52 weeks out on the calendar. And
It's
that's
more
when,
real.
yeah, they're like, who the heck is going to do this on the day? And then they'll come to us. And it's nice because even at, like, that 6 month, like, 4 month point, we can still take a lot from them and really, like,
Yeah.
be like, great, you've done a great job so far. Like, pat yourself on the back. You did very, very well. Let us come in. Let us,
You're
like,
safe now.
you're safe. You're home. Mama's here. We're here for you.
Mama's here.
Exactly. Mama's here. Exactly. So I would say it's kind of a mix, just depending, but, and we've had people who, like, at 30, 60 days out, who've reached out and to see if we have a date available, and
Wow.
sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. We try to help find them someone else who is. And sometimes there's a little bit of, like, almost like they're, like, nervous to say we're coming, it's in 2 months, we feel bad. And it's okay. Like, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to realize, like, this is a huge project and we want to enjoy it. Like,
That's
doesn't
such a
matter.
good tip. It is okay
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
ask for help. It's a
Yes.
huge thing you're undertaking.
Yes. It
Now, do
shouldn't
you?
be on one person. Sorry.
Now,
Kevin.
no, you go. But I was going to say, do you find when they're doing that, when they're coming at you, that the 4 months out, like, they're overwhelmed? Is that what the
I do find,
situation?
yeah, it is a little bit more like, okay, I got through all these, like, huge, like, points of what I was supposed
Milestones.
to get done. Yeah, milestones. And now I'm like, okay, well, who's going to put my guest book out? Who's going to make sure that this goes in the right place? Like, I feel comfortable with the people I booked, but who's going to pull it all together? Who's the glue? And it is like, I hate to use the word like stress or overwhelm because I don't want to like fear bait, but it is like, I mean, it's real, especially if you're like working or like I said, going to school or have family priorities or what have you. And you're like, oh, you know, 2 months, 3 months can go by like that. So I do think that like 6-month threshold is when you're like, oh, I've done all this work and I would actually like to enjoy it. So now I got to find someone that's going to let me enjoy it. Like,
yeah,
I'm not going to be working. It ain't going to be me. I can
Yeah.
tell you.
Well, and I think that was a good point with like work and family and even just still dating each other through this process.
Yes.
You know, like how do couples, because I'll meet with couples and you can tell that they're burnt out. Like, you know, like it just happened over the weekend. I met with a couple we do some Saturday appointments around here, and a couple came in and I was like the third person that they met with already that day. And they had 3 more meetings still
Oh my
scheduled.
goodness.
Oh,
You know, so
decision fatigue.
100%. So how do you feel couples can avoid burnout, you know,
Yeah.
like through the planning process?
Yeah, I think it's kind of twofold because I feel like there's some couple responsibility, but I also feel like there's some vendor responsibility. Like I think certain things of like pricing transparency and like being upfront about like availability and how you work and stuff. I feel like that's important because from the couple side, like I kind of feel like this broker in between, right? Like I see the vendor side, I see the couple side. And obviously like I'm going to advocate for my couple as much as I can, but I want to do it in a way that they can achieve what they want realistically and be happy. And so like if they don't have to inquire with people as much just to get pricing back to figure out it's way far out of their budget, then that's one less decision or one less phone call that they have to have. And I feel like it saves time. So that's kind of like on the one side, just knowing, and with with a planner, with a coordinator, you're getting that as part of the service, right? Because we are either researching it or we've worked with people before. So we're making recommendations that are based on A, your style and what you want, B, like maybe your personality and your budget and availability. So we're pulling that together as like part of our service for you. But if it's a client that's doing that on their own, knowing that, a photographer starts at 8,500 is going to be helpful for them rather than going, okay, that's about 3,000 over my starting budget or 5,000, whatever it may be. And then on the couple side, I think that having like a game plan and boundaries in place before you start is like the best way that I feel to go. Because I think once you kind of like get started down the road of this planning, then when things pop up at you, if you don't really kind of know how you're going to approach it as a team, then you're going to get overwhelmed.
Yeah, that's what we talked about that with Dan the other day. Like you have to stay a united front and kind of talk about those things at the beginning instead of getting frustrated in the middle.
Yes. And I let couples know, like, even if you decide, like if you get engaged at a time and then you're going to have a lot of family gatherings, or maybe you get engaged before the holidays, people are going to ask. They love you and they're going to ask.
Oh, a million questions.
Yes. So I tell them, like, especially if I'm working with them early and they are newly engaged or newly announcing that they've set a date, I let them know, like, figure out what your auto response is going to be, because every like aunt, uncle, grandma is going to ask you a question. So it's okay to say, we haven't even thought about that. Or, you know what, our planner's on it and we're not even worrying about it right now, because
I like the auto response. That like saves you a lot of like energy too.
Yes, exactly. Because then if you're like explaining to like, not to throw grandmas under the bus or anything, but you're doing like an all black, like monochrome wedding, and she's like, that's not how we did it. And you're like, I can't do this 16 times.
Grandma, no.
Grandma, like, come on, girl. Like, so it's just, that can be like, for me personally, when I went through it, it was kind of like exhausting. And then the couples I talked to, they're like, they're like, oh, I had to answer a million questions. So kind of knowing like, okay, we're going to go into this. We're going to talk a little bit about what we're doing. We're excited. But if they ask about who's invited or how many people or like any details we haven't worked out, we're just going to have this like default response. That's how it's going to work.
And it's kind of funny you say that, because I just thinking back to my, planning process for my wedding is my wife and I got engaged like towards the end of summer. And then, it took some time till we found a date. We decided to get married on New Year's Eve, but but went out, we were engaged for almost a year and a half by the time, like we picked the date, we decided we were going to do this, but so then the first holiday time, our family gave us so much grief about having a New Year's Eve wedding, and then so it's kind of funny. We did not have a default answer, and we were just kind of like, after the holidays, we were like, did we pick this? Was it wrong, to do? But then what crazy, like fast forward to the wedding, like everyone had such a great time. And then they're like, are you going to do another New Year's Eve party? Because no one ever has anything to do on New Year's Eve. But I was like, thinking back, I'm like, all you people complained about this.
Yes.
And now you guys all wish that we would do a New Year's Eve, party again.
I agree with that. Like, honestly, not to get off track, but I had never have anything to do on New Year's. Last year, I was just eating grapes under a table. Like, a party would be great to go to. So I think that was a great decision.
About renewal now, New Year's Eve. This was good.
Put it on your calendar.
Well, and it's funny. I picked it because I always hated working New Year's Eve, because New Year's Eve is just people are so rude and not fun to work with. So I figured now I have an excuse not to work on New Year's Eve. And that was my whole, and my wife at the time was a teacher. So it was a good time to, like, a break in her schedule. It was a good time to get married. Yeah. So that's, and to think,
like, if you had changed it from, like, it's hard when, a lot of people are giving, as soon as, like, you have any life event, people turn into, like, the etiquette police, or like this is how it's done. So it's like, to think if you had changed or your plans, and then they had a great freaking time anyway. So
I know.
Just, like, mind your business and show up and have a good time. And, it could be, there's people who have, like, really significant dates to them and their partner that they want to work around. And
totally.
Like, there's people who are like, oh, we're an ag family that falls in a really hard time, or this. And it's like, you're not going to please everybody ever with anything.
Ever.
So just focus on the two of you, focus on what your, like, little boundary, your little wall is going to be to protect your sanity, and just have that be. And if you say, like, you know what, we haven't thought about it, and their response is like, this, of course, like, this is not most people, but if they say, like, oh, you should really be thinking about it, you can be like, you know what, we absolutely should. And our planner is on it. Like, and in your head, you know the answer, but you don't have to share it with them,
But I love that's a great diffuser. Like, it just, like, stops them from going down that path of giving their full opinion of what, everybody thinks, they need to do. Because like you said, everyone gets so opinionated about weddings. And especially, I tell my couples, like, where are you on the food chain, which is, like, are you one of your first friends to get married? Or are you one of your last friends?
The guinea pig.
Oldest child? Are you the baby? Are you
because if you're one of your first friends, there's less pressure, I think, on you to plan a party, because there's less opinions about it from your friend group. So
yes. And then the couples that are, I work with a lot of couples who their friends are getting married at the same time as them, and so they're going to weddings during their engagement process, and then they're like, okay, I see what they did that I loved, or I see what they did that, like, I could kind of take it or leave it. I'd rather spend more time doing this. And, like, I call it, like, doing recon. Like, you're kind of like,
it's true.
Like, stealthily, like, there to celebrate the love of two great people, but also being like, okay, now you're looking at it through a totally different lens. So then you think, this is how my guests are looking at it. And they're not. They're there to have a great time. You're looking at it through that lens because you're in that, like, in that part of your life right now. And so it's
I have a story with that. That's so funny you say that, because when I used to work at the venue I was at, I had a couple that was coming up a few months later, and they were attending an event for another couple, and I came out and said hello to them, and then they emailed me the next day, and they were like, okay, so our friends had a French fry bar at their wedding, and we really want a French fry bar, but is it weird that we're copying them? I'm like, no, guys, if that's going to make you happy at your wedding, just do it. Like, stop thinking about what other people think, because again, everyone's going to have an opinion. So might as well have a party that you're really going to love.
And all they're going to do is be drinking and dancing and be like, French fries!
Literally,
like,
soak it up.
Drunk food.
Is this a slider right now? Like, that's what's going to happen. They're going to just be, like, so excited.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. But I think it's tricky. It's tricky when you're in it. It's so much easier on the other side to look back and be like, ugh. And then that happens too, is like once you get married and then you go to a wedding. I've been really blessed. I actually have one couple that I'm, like, 4 couples removed from them now. Like, they referred me to a couple who referred me to a couple.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's I'm like, awesome. You guys are like my little chain of couples here.
I love that.
But, like, at each wedding, it's been fun because they've been guests at the wedding. So like I get to see, like, I'm building my little crew here at the
Mm-hmm.
wedding. And it's so funny because like I'll try to pop in and say hi, and they're always like, it's so different on the other side. Like we get to just chill, and we love the bar and we love the food, and like we're just happy to be here. So that's what your guests are doing. They're just happy to be there, you know?
Yeah, and they're just there to enjoy,
Yeah.
and that's So I have a joke, but it's a bad joke. I always tell my couples, you want to have fun at a wedding, you need to be a guest at someone else's wedding, because you on the day of is so stressful.
It's like practice.
Yeah, it
I
really
mean, not
is.
as much if you have a coordinator or a planner. So.
Well,
if you had a baby.
Yeah.
True. But it's just,
Hair
talking, it's like talking to all the family and trying to get through that.
Yes.
It's just like when you're a guest, you blend in and you don't get to, you're not the star of the show, so to speak.
I had one groom that said we were like finishing up cocktail hour, and like it was maybe like 20 minutes of photos, and he like comes over to me. I was like, how you doing? Are you doing okay? And he's like, I feel like a Disney character. Like I'm smiling. And I was like, I've never heard it put that way, but it makes a lot of sense. He's like, I'm standing here. Everyone keeps coming to me. I have to like greet them. He's like, my social battery, because like the social battery check-ins are real too. That's like part of the stress management. Like I even tell my couples, like when we build their timeline, like built-in buffers for things, because I'll say like, okay, how are you? Do you need like 10 minutes for a cocktail in a private room to just like breathe?
Mm-hmm.
Because you feel like a Disney character. You're like, if I have to sign one more freaking Disney book, I'm done.
When I feel like guests come in like envisioning their own experience, and it's like, if I don't have like a meaningful conversation with the bride and groom, then did I even go to this wedding? So then it's like they're also looking to get something from you at the same time. And it's like, okay, well, like each conversation they have to deliver this amazing experience to. Like that must be exhausting as a couple.
Yes.
It really
is.
I
gotta make this a quality one-on-one with
Literally,
you right now.
But like 150 quality one-on-one.
Yes.
So
yes. But I think like having that plan and knowing like what your values are for the day is like another stress thing too, because you can follow a set like schedule of how a wedding would normally go, or like what the standard layout would be, and like you need to, and like my project management brain, like what is the value of each of those items to you? Like if if like cocktail hour and socializing and not having to like be on a strict schedule during that is a really high value to you, then you should do more photos beforehand. You should do like a first look. If not seeing your partner until you're at the aisle is high value, then we're going to sacrifice a little bit elsewhere. So like I did that. And I think that's part of like, to kind of bring it back to the game plan, is knowing like not only what our default responses are, but like what is our, like, not to be corporate brain, but like what is our mission statement for this like wedding? Like what is our value? And like one of the questions I ask new couples is, what do you want the day to like feel like? Like when you look back,
I like
how do you want it to feel? Because that's what you're going to remember. Like, did I feel rushed? Did I feel like unsupported? Did I feel like I was in a million places at one? Or did I feel relaxed and I felt like I got to talk to everybody I could, and I had a hell of a party and I had a great time? Like, what is that importance? And then from that, like, what is the feel, the vibe, if you will, that you want? Then we can figure out what your like high value items are and work around it. Like, that's how I do it, at least.
I like that. That's very, very smart, because it's all about, everyone I think has a different feel and what's important to them. And I think that's really cool.
So. I like that too. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So how do couples focus on what's important and let go of what the need for perfection at a wedding?
Oh God, you're asking a perfectionist how to let go and not have a need for perfection. I think that, and of course, like open to any of your guys' input on this, but I just think like, again, having those values of what's important to you and having that conversation, just the two of you, because everyone is going to have different values. Every single person, like your parents, your step-parents, your friends, everybody. So I think that if the two of you like make a date of it, you get engaged, number one, enjoy being engaged. Just because you're engaged does not mean you need to like sprint to the aisle, unless that's what you want. Unless you're like, I have a high want to not have a long engagement, then like, good for you, boo. Do what you want to do. But like, if you don't want to have to feel like you make any decisions, like it's okay to have a longer engagement. It's okay to plan 2 years out or 3 years out, whatever you want. Or say we're going to take 6 months and then figure it out from there, or a year and figure it out. So like, number one, enjoy being engaged. Take your time if you choose to. And then when you do decide to like make your game plan, like make a fun time of it. Like if you're going to look at venues in a certain area, like sprinkle in, don't do like 7 back-to-back meetings, like
No,
go
that's insane. Yeah.
like go wine tasting and then go to a venue, or like go to a nice dinner and do something else, or like see what's in that area and make a weekend of it, or take yourselves out on a nice date and like get dressed up and figure out like, okay, what's our top 3, like what's our 3 bullet points of how we want to do this, and like make it be fun and continue to like date each other through it, and not just be like business partners of your wedding business that you're now in together and like have to figure out. But I think that that's the important part, is like making it fun and making it worthwhile so that you enjoy the process.
Yeah, and I think you brought up 2 really, really good points, is that I think couples don't take the time to like really hash out the game plan and communicate, just the 2 of you without the outside noise. And then you brought up dating. I'm a big believer that you need to continue to date through this. And it reminds you of why this stress and everything you're going on. It's like, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Because it gets so crazy. So those are 2 really good big takeaways.
I think that like this might be a hot topic, a hot take, if you will, but I do think that like that one-on-one conversation and like kind of removing outside noise before you go too far also includes vendors, and also includes like the wedding industry as a whole, because because there's a way I would do something doesn't mean it's the only way, and doesn't mean it's always going to be the right way. I mean, the first year of how I did weddings is not how I do weddings now, for quite a few things. I don't do rehearsals the same. I don't do timelines the same. And so I'm constantly learning, and I am by no means like the end all be all of anything. And I don't think I am. And I think that it's important to like know what your vision is for it, kind of know what you want, or know what you don't want too. You don't have to be 100% sold on what your yeses are, but to know what your like firm boundaries are is great. And then when you find people that are going to be on your vendor team that you can talk to and like have a real conversation with. And I tell couples like, I will do everything I can to advocate for you to get what you want, if it's going to be what's realistic and best for you. Like if you tell me you want to zip line into your ceremony and like all like you're going to skydive in, like if that's truly what you want, if that's top number 1, like we're going to figure it out. But if it's in like Oklahoma during tornado season, I'm going to have a come to Jesus meeting with you and be like, hey,
little realism.
Yeah, it's like I'm doing you a disservice to just be like, yes, we can do it. That's what you want. We can do it. Like as part of why you should have good people on your team is to be like, I love your idea. I love the thought behind it. How can we do it so that A, it's executed properly and you're happy, and B, it makes sense for the vendors? Because like a strong vision on something that's not realistic for like venue or budget or just, I don't know, tornado season in Oklahoma, whatever you want to call it, is
having
not
a Glenn Powell moment right now.
Okay, if Glenn Powell's there, like we're sold. Like we will, I'm literally
then it's
the tornado's taking things off of Glenn Powell as far as I'm concerned.
Oh my.
I haven't seen the new Twisters movie yet, but I'm ready.
It was very good. Very good.
But yeah, so that like reality of like, we want the best for you. We want you to be happy. We want to make sure we can execute things successfully for you. But if you tell me like what your big ones are and we can make it happen, we're going to make it happen. So.
And I love that you brought up the point that what you did 6 years ago is not what you're doing now, because I feel like the wedding industry continues to change and evolve. And right now, I feel like we're in this phase where weddings are becoming a little bit non-traditional, and so I think the older, which I think brings the stress onto the couples, because grandma and aunts, uncles, and parents are all, we have to do it this way, and this is how weddings always happen. And it's like, no, weddings are very non-traditional right now. So I think that's a really good point you brought up. Thank you for that.
I have my assistant, like a little side story. I was actually just with her yesterday, Avery. She's wonderful. She's like literally keeps me sane every day. I could not do it without her. She's engaged. She's getting married in November, which is exciting because like I get to have worked with her and now like seen her meet her partner and like be part of that experience.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's like, it's fun, but we were just chatting about, like wedding planning, and she was saying that she was talking to her mom who was married in like the late 80s. And, her mom was talking about how when she got married, there was a lot of things that she wasn't able to do because a parent figure on some side, had opinions and had certain things that they wanted. And there was certain things that she like let go of because there was other outside influences that were like, this is how we're going to do it. And I'm like, the timeline is just keeps going on. Like my parents did it and their parents did it.
Let's
and then
break the cycle.
Yeah, let's break the cycle. So it's like, for me, like the way my brain works is kind of comforting. I'm like, oh, it's not like a solitary experience. Like we all are going to be in that position one time or another. So, and I think it's good. And I think that when you're on the other side of it and you've gone through a wedding planning process, like as a outside person, like have grace for those people that are in that process and be gentle with them and be kind and like know that they're dealing with a lot right now.
And every person's experience is different, of course. So you do have to approach it with that gentleness.
Yeah, absolutely.
My favorite thing to tell the couples when they come in and you can tell that they're stressed out, I'm like, you guys don't like each other right now. And it kind of breaks the tension. And they're like, well, how can you tell? I'm like, I could just read it right off of you guys. So it's just kind of funny that way. So
it's also good to have like a non-wedding day, like no wedding Wednesdays or something where you're like, we don't 100%. Even talk about it. Don't even bring it up to me. Like sometimes you're done. You're like, I don't want to think about it anymore.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you. People forget that. So, all right, tips. Let's give us some. Let's. What are some Bradie tips for reducing stress during the planning process?
I think my number one tip is like wedding planning happens around life. Like your life is what is most important. You and your partner, and the things you like to do, and the things that you're already doing that you enjoy. That is number one and should stay number one. The wedding planning is an amazing, fun thing. You're going to get to do it with each other. You're going to get to like pick all these things and have this totally curated experience. And it's fantastic, but it should come second. And you should have people on your team, whether it's like number one, vendors, people who are there to be there for you, to support you and like make it more fun. It's going to be more fun if you have the right team. So with that like overarching view of having it happen around your life, like you said, continue to go on dates, have a little like checklist like of things that you're going to do that week or next month. If you're working with a planner, like we get that to you. We are checking with you every month. We tell you like, these are the things that need to get done now. Here's how we can help you. Here's some people we would recommend that we've like vetted and worked with. And like, I love to recommend vendors that I've just like been there with them and been like, they're amazing. They will go like 100 yards, whatever they got to do to get things done for a couple. And I want to keep working with them because I know it's going to have the best experience for the couple. So having like a coordinator or planner and other vendor team members that can like give you those referrals and take that stress off is definitely going to be good. And then I think the other one would be like, have no wedding like dates, like dates where you go to dinner, you go to a movie and like, you don't talk about wedding stuff. And like, if someone texts you a wedding question, you don't have to respond and you don't have to check your email about it. Like if you have a wedding email, which is a great idea to kind of like section it out of your life, like compartmentalize as much as you can, you know, have a wedding bank account, have a wedding email, have a wedding, you know, set up a Google Voice phone number if you want to, so that you can like log in and check your text messages. Like just because we live in a time where you can be reached doesn't mean that you are always in the space to deal with it. So it's okay to be like, it's a no from me, dog. Not today.
And the best part is after the wedding, you can vape all of us and get rid of all of us wedding people. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I feel like I've made like friends with quite a bit of my couples because
I agree.
Working with them. I think I have the unique side where I worked with them for so long with so much interaction that like by the end, I mean, we get on meetings. I'm like, what's up, girl? How's your day? Like, we get coffee after. It's pretty great. But then we can just like talk about everything that's not wedding related. So it's nice.
That was one thing I always like, and I don't know if you guys had experienced that. I was always so sad about with being a coordinator is you do spend like extended amounts of time with them and learn so much about them that you feel like they hold such a special place in your life. And then they get married and then they go off and you're like, bye.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
I stay creeping.
I miss you. I saw one of my couples, shout out to Abby and Francis. I saw them at Outside Lands.
Oh, funny.
Ago. And I was like, oh my God. And we just had this just great moment and I missed them so much. And I was like, I miss you.
You're like,
you're having a good time. Yeah.
I stay creeping on my couples. I'm like, I follow you on Instagram. They're like graduating college, getting their master's degree, like running half marathons. I'm like, heart and shit. And I'm like, you go, girl, get it. Like, one of the grooms just did like, he's like involved in like local politics and like stuff in his community. And I'm like, so proud of you. I do feel like half big sister, half mom, half friend. Like, I don't know. They're like my little babies. I just love them.
You did hold a special place in their life. Like, they're always going to remember you as their wedding day, you know?
I mean, I hope so. I love them. I love like working with them and like just creating that relationship. And it's just fun. It's fun and I like it. And there's light at the end of the tunnel. It's going to be amazing.
I think people remember. Like, so when I go visit my grandma, we talk about wedding planning when I was a coordinator because it was just my job and what I did. And she would always say, like, having a wedding planner is a must. Like, and she's like, you know, old. She's my grandma.
Your grandma's
so like
ahead of the times.
but she was like, I still think about her. Like, she was so sweet. She did so much for me the day of. And
oh my God.
I was like, oh, that's so sweet. So she's
so your grandma had a wedding planner?
Yeah.
That's impressive.
When did your grandma get married?
Oh, I don't know that. Maybe I'll get back to you guys on that.
The early 1900s?
No, she's not that old. I think she's like early 70s, you know, late 60s.
That's pretty good, though.
I was gonna say that's so odd for that era. Yeah,
I would say because I think my mom. I would say probably like 30 something years ago. That's still
that's still pretty good. Yeah.
But she talks about her, and I'm like, oh, that makes me happy. It makes my heart happy. So
I hope so. I hope that one day my couples are like sitting there and talking, and they're like, "Remember that day?" Like I love it. I hope so. Yeah, I'll be dead and gone, and they'll be like keeping me alive in
rocking
spirit.
On the
chair. Memories live on.
Exactly. I'll be like wedding party planning in heaven. I'll be like, got you.
I got you, girl.
Got you, girl. We got Jesus coming up for a special guest.
Officiating the wedding.
Yes.
All right. Any other tips that we got?
I think that's it. I mean, I think that those are like pretty big umbrella things. And I think number one, like create your boundaries, you know, set aside your time that is just going to be for the two of you, invest in the right people for you, date your vendors, find their right fit, make sure that they're on your team and just try to have fun while you're doing it as much as you can.
Honestly, your automated response tip was a big takeaway for me. Like, and I think that's a very easy thing for couples to incorporate in the process. So I think it's something they can incorporate now, honestly.
Yeah. I like it. It's like an out of office. They're like, sorry.
It is,
I am out of wedding office right now and I will not be answering your questions. No further questions. Thank you. Yeah.
I think because we set boundaries with our clients, I think it's fair for them to set boundaries with us as well.
Totally.
So, yeah, 100%.
Goes both ways.
I agree. So, all right. So, Bradie, we ask everyone that comes on the episode or the show what is your favorite part of a wedding?
Yes. My favorite part of a wedding is right after the ceremony when the couple, you know, they make it down the aisle. And usually we have like a little area that they're going to as we like wait to kind of get guests a cocktail hour. And you know, it's usually at that time that they get there and I try to give them some space and like close the door. But that like moment when they like look at each other and they're like, oh my God, we just got married. And like, it's like an audible like exhale of like, we did it and it's done. And it's really, there is like a mind shift of like, now we get to party. Like, it just happens so fast. Like all the like anticipation and anxiety or like excitement is build up to that moment and then it's done and you're like, oh, it's all good from now on. Like we're getting cocktails. We're getting food.
So it's like making it to the top of the mountain and it's all downhill from there, man.
Yes.
It's let the fun begin.
Exactly. That's my number one, my like 1A, if I may.
I like 1A.
When I do my, you know, ceremony rehearsal and when I do the ceremony, when I get the wedding party all lined up, whether it's just a couple people or a big wedding party, I do 2 deep yoga breaths with everybody and we practice it at the rehearsal. And I feel like it's this weird moment where we're like, obviously we're all either standing in a room or like at a hiding place and it's quiet and you can hear guests and like there's anticipation that's happening. And so I always like get them lined up and I'm like, okay, you guys, let's take like a deep collective yoga breath together, let it out. And then we do one more. And then I say like, okay, shake it out, like shake out all the tension. And that's my probably second favorite part because it's the same feeling, the same like relaxation, but with like their whole group of people where they're like, okay, we're going to be good. Everything's going to be good. And that's like, it's also good for me too, because I'm like going. So I'm making myself like take a breath before we start. So those are my two. The right before we start and the right after we end are my favorite.
Well, that's probably good because there's so much stress that gets, like leading up to that rehearsal moment, because everyone's, and that's, the beginning of everything, so to speak, for the wedding and all that. So for
I'm really glad we chose you for this topic. I feel like we are getting a treasure trove of tips today. Like, this is all good stuff.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love learning about it. I'm like a total nerd. Like, my degree that I swear I went to school for forever for and finally finished is in like small business and entrepreneurship. And like, so I nerd out about it. I'm like, okay, how can I do things better? And like talking to people who've been doing it and like are just like such amazing parts of the industry. I'm like, let's do it. I could talk about it all day. This would be a 3-hour podcast.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's the people that are like, oh, I don't go to conferences, I don't get anything out. It's like, you got to go. You got to continue to learn and continue to get educated, because
it's a mindset thing too.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
I want to know, like, I don't know your guys' job. And I mean, like, I don't do your job. I don't do catering's job. I don't do photography. I work with all those people and I try to communicate with those people and like have a good team atmosphere. And like, we're all on the same like goal, right? We're all trying to get to the same finish line. And, but I need you to tell me how I can do my job better or what I could do to work for you better. And like, same thing, like if there's, like I said, I didn't do it the same way 5 years ago that I do now. It's because I've learned more and because I've asked people, like, when they say like, oh, everything was so great, like, you're great to work with. And I'm like, great. Is there any feedback? Like, it's not personal. Just tell me. Like, if I would really love 15 more minutes, or like, hey, you're kind of pushy after cocktail hour. Like, I would love to know, because it makes it better for everyone. And like you said, August, it's like a mindset. It's like, it's not a personal attack of how I do it or how I should do it. It's like, it's a lifetime of learning that
we're always learning. Yeah.
No, and exactly. I value like other vendors and our couples' feedback, because that's, like you said, we're only as good as our last wedding is kind of the mentality I take here. And so if we were horrible at our last wedding, then we're a horrible company right now until we get to the next wedding and fix it. But like, I love the feedback, because like you say, that's how you grow and learn, and like, things are changing constantly, and like, we stay the same age, but our couples, we get older, but our couples stay the same age. So how do we continue to relate to them and connect to them through the process?
Yeah, that's a big one too.
Yeah. So anyway, absolutely. All right. So how does couples get a hold of you, Bradie?
Yes. Well, I'm on Instagram at Flores Events, FLORESEVENTS. And Flores is my last name. First name is Bradie, like Tom Brady, but with an IE. It's a lot of spelling. I'm the spelling bee will commence now. And you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on my website, which is floresevents.online, not .com. And I've got all my
I never heard of .online.
Yeah, she's in the new age. Okay, she's not bored. .com was not available, so
you gotta take what you can get.
That's right, and I love it. So, but yeah, you can find out all about like the services that we offer, and if you want to take a look at some things our past couples have said, we're at, I believe, just at 50 5-star reviews right now from different couples, which I'm like really excited about, because
that's great.
We love that feedback. So like, take a look, vet us, ask questions, and we're growing our team. So it's myself. I know I mentioned Avery. She's Avery. But we're growing and bringing in more coordinators and having the same spirit and the same energy to just do our best. And yeah, I'm really excited.
And that's good to hear.
My favorite thing on your website is everybody needs a Bradie, and I think it's so cute. And I think about it all the time. I think it's really cute.
Well, I'm like, okay, well, like everybody, I need an Avery. Everybody needs an Avery, and I'm like, everyone's gonna need everyone. It's just like you need a person. But thank you. I had a couple people tell me that at like different events, and I was like, okay, I think this is a thing. Like,
it's perfect.
Yeah, it is. There's like I said, the mom / big sister / everything in me is like, oh, thank you. Like, what's that? Is it Sally Fields? Where she's like, they like me. They really like me. Like, that. I swear. But yeah, I love it. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, Bradie, thank you so much for being here today. And we will hope to have you back to talk about more things here on Now That I'm Engaged. How do I get married? So everyone, take care. We'll see you next time. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Now That I'm Engaged, How Do I Get Married podcast, brought to you by Fantasy Sound Event Services. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode. Please get in touch with me if you have a topic you would like us to cover, or if you are struggling with your wedding planning. Please be sure to submit a question at podcast@fantasysound.com. I encourage you to check out our other episodes on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you're a fan, we'd love if you would subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. It helps others find our podcast so they can learn from our guests too. And to everyone listening, happy wedding planning.